Before we start this video, a large thank you to Vasco, Michael, Lem, Xlim, Mustafa, Soulstorm, Cheeky, and Tan Hapan for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hello guys, today we're going to make it so we can change our hair color via hair color sliders or buttons. So the sliders will be red, green, or blue, and the buttons will be preset colors that we can select from. So I'm going to start by duplicating the hair button, and I'm going to drag it right below hair. I'm going to call this hair color. I'm going to change the text to hair color. Now, since we're adding a new button to the main menus, you remember in the last video where we disable all of our buttons when we open up a menu and then re-enable them after, we'll have to do the same thing with this new button. So I'm going to also remove the hairstyles game object open and hairstyle button select on this because this is going to have its own menu. And I'm actually going to duplicate the skin button and call it start game because I don't want to have to come back later and add another button to all the re-enabling and disabling, because I'm just going to add this right now. These are all the buttons I have planned for this tutorial series. So I'm going to go ahead now and add start game and hair color to the enable and disable sections that we created on the last video on the hair menus. So where we select our hair game object and we finalize the confirmation. So while I do that, I'm going to talk over the video a little bit because you can just follow along. It's very straightforward. The reason why I'm only adding a hair color button and not a skin color button or eyebrow color button or beard color button, for example, is because the logic is exactly the same. What I'm doing right now in this tutorial, you can apply for anything because essentially we're just changing the color of a material via script, and we're editing that color with a combination of color sliders or color buttons. So you can apply this for things like skin color or beard color, whatever, etc., etc. And I will show you how to do it with a Cinti model smart material. I call it smart material, the one where you can edit the materials, colors for different parts of the material. And I will show you how to do it with a regular material because it is nearly identical, the process, I mean. Okay, so now that we have an idea of where we're going, let's actually get started. I've added on all this to here. I'm just going to make sure I re-enable these buttons here, and going to do it for the last one over here. So we're re-enabling the hair color and the start game buttons. Go here to bull is interactable, yes. Button, bull is interactable, yes. Okay, now that's fine. Now I'm just going to test this. We click on hair, and yes, all the buttons become deactivated. We confirm by clicking onto one of the styles, and they all come back. So that's working as intended. I'm just going to show you what this will look like first. As you can see here, I have some color swatches. If I go over to any of the color swatches, the sliders match the color of the color box or the image in the color box, and the hair color changes. But I can also go down to the color sliders here, and I can actually edit the values with these sliders, which is pretty cool. So this is the endgame effect. This is the project I have that myself and a friend of mine are working on. This is the end result that I have right now as the current state that it's in. So we're going to do exactly that. So let's go over into the middle panel background game object here, and I'm going to create a new empty game object, and I'm just going to call this hair color, and I'm going to go up here, hold alt, and make it the size of the game object that it's in. And I am then going to go under this and create a new UI button, and I'm just going to I'm going to delete that, and let's make another empty game object first, and I'm going to call this hair color buttons. I'm going to give them their own little separate sections. Going to make it the full size of the game object and pull up to about a third. And again, this is just preference. The size isn't really important here. I'm just going to make it so it's about a third of the space. And this is where we're going to put all the buttons that will have preset colors. So I'm then going to put a horizontal. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use a grid layout group in here because if you want to have a bunch, a horizontal group won't work as well as a grid group. So I'm going to use a grid group. I'm going to then add a UI button in here, and I'm going to make sure this grid group is set to the middle center. I'm going to call this hair color. Let's go over here now to the group. Let's change the child alignment to middle center. It looks good. I'm then going to erase the text from this, and then we're left with just a button right there that has a plain image on it. Okay, so I'm going to add a UI image to this. I'm going to call this frame. And actually, I'm going to drag out the frame under it and then parent the button back on the frame. So the frame should come first, and then the last child is the hair color button, which is basically going to take place over the top of it. So I'm then going to use this little frame image I have here, and I'm going to change the frame to this. This just gives it a nice little an effect. You don't need this. I'm doing this because then right here where we see the source image, we're going to change the color of the frame to let the button know it's been selected. So right now, if I change the color of the button to red, this will be the color that the hair is going to change to, and then you can see the frame on the outside of it right there. Right there where it says the target graphic, we can actually drag the frame into that, and we can edit the color of the frame, which we will do momentarily. Okay, so now that that is there, let's go to the hair color main menu button. Let's add an on-click event, and then let's actually drag in the hair color button. And let's say button is interactable, let's disable that. And then let's drag in the start button, and let's change that to non-interactable as well. So the first thing we do is disable all of our buttons, so you're forced to only be able to use the hair color menu. And then we drag in the hair color game object, set active, and turn that to true. And then we drag in the first button that we have selected, or we've created rather, which is the hair color button. And we go down here and we hit button, and we hit dot select. Okay, that looks good. Now let's actually disable this and test it in the game. So if we go in here and I hit play, and if I go and click hair color, I think I messed something up because that's opening up the hairstyles menu. Yes, I did. I actually dragged in hairstyles. So drag in hair color, hit game object, set active, and true. Now if we start the game, go in, you will see that, yes, this is working perfectly. Okay, cool. So we have no way to tell that this button is selected. So let's actually do what I was just referencing. So I have a frame here because I don't want to change the actual color of the button because that's going to indicate what color the hair is. So I drag in the frame on the target graphic here. And since my frame is all white, you can just use a plain white image for this if you want. I'm going to make it so the highlight color is, we'll just, for something different, we'll say yellow. And then the selected color will also be yellow. And this will change the color of the frame instead of the button itself when you actually highlight this. And this is useful for situations like this where you don't want to change the button because the button represents the color of the hair. And there you go, it is yellow, indicating that we have it selected. But right now it does nothing. It doesn't have a purpose. We will get to that though. So now let's go under the hair color game object here in the middle panel background. Let's add a script called select hair color. I'm going to create and open it up. I'm just going to take a sip of tea. Okay, the first thing we want to do is make a public float for red amount, and then another public float for green amount. Wow, the autocomplete is really nice. And another public float for a blue amount. It just knew right what I was going for. And we can add alpha amount if you want to. We won't really use it, but I'll put it there just in case some people have a purpose for it. So let's go down here now and let's create a public list. And let's call this skin mesh renderer. And you can call this renderers or renderers list. And we're going to say equals new list skin mesh renderers. And the reason why we're doing this is because the material actually rests on the skin mesh renderer of the game objects that hold the hair. So we're going to grab the material from the skin mesh renderer and then change the color properties of that material. So for example, every game object that has hair on your model has a skin mesh renderer, and I'll show you. So let's go into the materials here, and you can see these custom materials. There is a bunch of color settings here, and for Cinti you can specifically reference the color hair setting, as you can see here, and we're going to do that. But if you have a normal material, we can still work with that too, much the same way. So I'm going to make a new material called test material, and you can still see here there is a color up here. It's white by default. Change it to red, whatever you want. We can actually do the same thing here and just change that color as well. So normal materials work, but I'm going to show you how to do this specific Cinti material way too, since I am using their model for this tutorial. So let's go over to the hairstyles game object again, or hair color game object rather, sorry. And let's open up this script and save it. So we have the variable for the list here. And then the renders list here, there's a really easy way to populate this. We go to our model, go to where you have the hair, all the hairs, and you highlight them all by clicking on the first one and holding shift and clicking the last one. And I just realized I accidentally unclicked the game object with the script. So I'm going to lock that by clicking this little lock icon up here. Click on the first one, hold shift, click all of them, and then just drag them on top of the list here to get this little icon, and it populates it. Very easy. You don't have to manually drag them in one by one. That would be so painful. You can do the same thing too if you have eyebrows, because if we're changing the color of the hair, I'm just going to assume most people want to match the eyebrows to the hair color, and then do the same thing with the beard as well. You can make individual color settings for all of these too. You just would make this hair selector color game object and script and functionality 3 separate times, one for the beard, one for the hair, and one for the eyebrows. But we're going to do it all in one shebang because, again, the logic is exactly the same, and repeating it wouldn't really teach you anything new. So once we have them all there and the list is populated, let's go back to the select hair color script. I'm going to make a private variable of type color, and I'm just going to call that current hair color or current color. And this is what we're going to use basically to assign the hair the color that we've selected. Then I'm going to make a public void called set hair color. And inside this void, I'm going to say current hair color is equal to new color. And it's going to equate to the red amount, the green amount, and the blue amount. And that's how we're going to get our new color. So now we're actually going to create a couple ways to change this. If you want to, you can include the alpha amount too. You don't need to. If people are using the alpha amount for whatever reason, you can put that in there as well. I won't be using it in this video. I just included it in case people wanted to, just to show that you can use it in this function. So let's make a for loop, and we're going to go through everything in the render list. So for every item in the render list, so you do that by saying renderlist.count. So for every item in that render list, we're going to say renderlist i.material, and that's how we reference the material. Dot set color, very simple, and then we can reference, if you're using a Cinti material, we can say underscore color underscore hair, which is, I believe, the proper reference for theirs, and then we will change that to the current hair color. So all that does is it goes through every skin mesh renderer, which we populated in the list, and then it grabs the material on that skin mesh renderer, and then it sets the color to the specific category that we were changing it to. Specifically, this one was the hair color, and we're changing that to the current hair color variable. We're then going to add using Unity Engine.ui, because we're going to add sliders for red slider, green slider, and blue slider. And we're going to make our sliders. And our sliders is how we're going to change this, this current color we have. So I'm going to make another public void called update sliders. And inside this, I'm going to simply say red amount is equal to red slider.value. Likewise, green amount is equal to green slider.value. And man, this autocorrect is so great. Blue amount is equal to blue slider.value. And then I'm going to say set hair color, and that would change the hair color at the end there. So after the sliders are changed, we're actually applying the change to all of the skin mesh renderers, our beards and our hairs, etc., etc. All right, so let's duplicate this button, and let's bring it down here, because I'm going to use this for our sliders. Actually, you know what? I am going to just delete this, and we're going to, I'll say hair color sliders, and I'll just delete the button from this. We'll keep the game object though. And I'm going to make I'm going to remove this select hair color script from this. Oh, that's not on that. I just have a lock still. It's my bad. Unlock that so you can see what you're dealing with. I'm going to remove the grid component from this, and I'm going to add a vertical layout group. I'm going to make it middle center, and I'm going to create a slider first. We'll do one and we'll duplicate it later. So we'll make this one the way we want it. I'm going to call this the red slider. That will be the first color. And just for the sake of having it look different from the other sliders, I'm going to make it very, it's going to indicate that it's red very clearly. So we'll change the fill area to a solid red color. And we want to change that background to something that's not white, maybe like a darker gray or like a black. And also change the handle to red as well. Or actually what we could do is we could keep the handle white. I think I have this done on my other one. We could change it to red when it's selected. Let's change the background here to a, like, gray looks fine. Just so it's not so, there we go, that's fine. And I'm going to see if the handle is what's defaultly selected when you select this. Yes, it is the knob. Let's change that to white. And then if we go here onto the red slider, the target graphic is the handle. And we can change that to red when it's selected. So let's go ahead and do that. Highlighted color and selected color will be red. There we go. All right, now let's just duplicate this for the green and blue sliders and do the same thing. Just change the fill, and then for blue, do the same thing and change it to blue. So basically what we want to do is we want to change the values of our floats on our scripts to match the values of these sliders, and then we pass those values on to the color values, and then we change the color values, which changes the color, and then we're applying the color to all of our objects, hairs, beards, eyebrows, etc., etc. So it's pretty simple. Now let's go over to the hair color game object here, and let's drag in our sliders, the red slider, the green slider, and then the blue slider, like so. Okay, that looks good. And let's add an on value change to all three sliders and put in the hair color. And where's the select hair color? Just go to, what did I call it again? Update sliders. There we go. So every time the value of the sliders changed, it's updating the sliders. Now the sliders are defaultly on a value between 0 and 1, which is fine. That's what we need. So that's perfect. Okay, now it's just doing that, and then we're changing the hair color here. So that should work just fine. Now, I didn't change the fill area for the green slider. It's still red. And I didn't do it for the blue sliders. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now, because if not, it's going to look kind of silly. Let's paste that in there. Let's go down here. And the fill area, again, I'm just going to copy this blue color and put it down here. And that should be fine. Now, if I start the game here now and go to hair color, and I actually crank these values, you will see that the hair does indeed change as is intended. So that's great. Now the buttons still don't do anything, that's fine. We're going to get to that, but the sliders can change the hair color, and the values that you edit here will change the way the hair looks. Okay, cool. So what's next? Well, let's do it with the regular material, so the people at home who aren't using a Cinti model still have benefit from this tutorial. I'm going to make material called hair. I'm just going to apply it to the first hairstyle here to show you. So you can see now it's white. There's nothing applied to it. I'm going to comment out this code, and then right below this is very similar. I'm just going to say render list. Instead of saying color hair, it's just called color. That's how you reference the color in a default material. You just underscore color and save that. And now back in here, you can see I've only applied it to this one hairstyle, not the beard and eyes, but you can see it changes just as is intended. So it works the exact same way. Very similar, and a lot of people, I'm sure, will have their own models with normal materials. As long as you have your own material for your hair, you're fine and good to go. And there we go. The value still changes. Okay, so we need the buttons to do stuff now. So let's get around to doing that. Right now, the buttons just kind of looks like it's there. It's not doing much. So if you open up your color here, make sure the red is on, or the color is on RGB 0 to 1.0, not 0 to 255. This basically allows you to make the color using RGB with the combination of values between 0 and 1. This just makes a lot more sense because our sliders are on the same value between 0 and 1. It's a lot easier to understand. So let's add a script to this. I'm going to call it color button. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a script to basically read the color of the button and then assign that color to the sliders, which will then change the hair color. So we'll start by saying using unityengine.ui. This is because we're going to need to use our sliders in here. I'm then going to make a header for color values. And I'm going to go to our other script here and just copy all of the values that we need. I'm not going to use the alpha here because, again, we're not using it. And I'm going to make another header for the sliders. And while I'm doing that, I'm actually going to go back and use headers on the other script too, so it makes things in the inspector very clear and nice. I typically do this. I just didn't think of it before, I suppose. So I'm going to go back over here and paste the sliders header here, and then paste the color values header above the color values. Okay, now with that, we need to now make an image variable, the image being the actual image of the button. That's how we're going to get our color. So we'll make a public image variable, call that color image. And then on awake, we're going to say color image equals get component image. This is because, again, this should be on the same game object as the button itself. So then we're going to say the red amount variable up here is equal to the color image dot color. And I believe then it is .r. And then we do the same thing for green amount and the autocomplete coming in clutch here. And then we do the same thing for the blue amount. And this actually gets the values of the color and then just copies them here. It's so useful. And then we'll say public void dot set slider values to image color. We're going to make that, and it's going to do exactly as it suggests. We're going to change the color sliders here to the values that we stole or grabbed from the image on awake. So basically, if you change the color of the image in the inspector, these values will change on awake. So red slider dot value equals red amount, green slider dot value equals green amount, blue slider dot value equals blue amount. Then let's reference our public select hair color script, and then down here we can say select hair color dots, and then we can, if you want to, you can assign them to the sliders here as well if you just want to reference the sliders there, or you can say red amount equals red amount, green amount equals green amount, and then blue amount equals blue amount, and then just set hair color. And that's it. Then basically you can duplicate these buttons, and whatever color you set them as in the inspector is what color they will then pass off to the actual color of the hair. So let's go down here now on the button, and we want to actually make this happen when you mouse over it. So to do that, let's actually drag in the sliders first and the variables in here, like so. Because again, we're changing these sliders. And then let's drag in the select hair color script. And if we go down here then and we do on click, what you want to do is go down here on the color button and set slider values to image color if you click it. And then let's add an event down here. So that would be, I believe it's called an event trigger, yes. We want to add for on pointer enter, and we want to add select. So select using a controller typically, and on pointer enter will be if you're mousing it. And then we just do the same thing here. We want to add an event to both of these. We then want to drag in the button itself, which is just called hair color for me. Go down to color button, which is a script that is attached to this button. It's not popping up for me there for a second. Unless, oh, I just think I don't see it. Yep, there it is. And then just click on set slider values to image color, and that will adjust the sliders to copy the color of the image. And if we duplicate this now, this button, we can move it out of here and just going to duplicate this by frame. And then I will duplicate it again, and I'll make one. I'm just going to make them all random colors. I'll just call this hair color. Actually, let's call this red color. And then I'm going to call this blonde color. We'll make a weird blonde color there. And then I'm going to call this brown color. And then I'm going to set the actual color of the button right here. So that would be this. Let's make this blondish. There we go. And then let's go and make this one a darker brown. And we do that, just run the ring here until I find it. There it is. Okay, that looks fine. There we go. Now, if this is working correctly, I should be able to start the game, and I should be able to click these buttons, and that will do as it is expected. So let's actually go down here now on the hair color, and let's add a button down here, and let's make this confirm. This is if you want to confirm your selection or confirm hair color. I'm going to drag that right below it all, and this will be the button to select. If you're operating the sliders, you just go down and you're done. We're also going to make it so if you press enter or confirm by using one of the color buttons, it also closes the menu as well. So I'm going to change the button text to confirm. I'm going to raise the font so it's not, it's actually readable. And then I'm going to make the highlighted color, again, the same as our other buttons, just make it red. And the selected color, the same thing, so it's easy to see when we have the button selected. Okay, and much like the previous steps, we have to reopen all of our menus. So let's make a, I believe it's 6. Yes, we have 6 buttons. And then we also want to select the last button we clicked when we got into this menu, which in this case will be hair color. So that would be 7 steps. So the first step is to reactivate every single button and set them to is interactable. And then the last step would be to select the last button that we chose to get into this menu and select that button. That will be the hair color button. So I'm just going to do this really quick. There we go, off camera. So I'm not making you sit through me doing that for the same thing. And then go here and button, select. We are good to go. Now, we have to do this for the hair color buttons as well, because we want to be able to hit confirm on these buttons by pressing enter or by clicking on them, whatever. So we do that by, we do the same thing by adding these on-click events. We reactivate all the buttons, so let's add 6 of those. And then the 7th one will be making it go back and select the hair color button when we've closed this menu. And we actually have to close this menu too. We close the menu by disabling the hair color game object. That will be under the middle panel background. I forgot to do that. I'll do that momentarily. And likewise, I am not going to make you sit through all this of me just doing this right here. Button is interactable, so I will fast forward to the point where I am done that. Okay, now that's all done. There we go, the hair color menu. We actually have to close it out. So let's make sure we're actually enabling the right menu and closing the right menu. And if we go into the game here now and we hit hair color and we go over, there we go. The buttons actually change the hair color and that works as intended. So let's do the last step and go over here now and add another on-click event. And go to hair color and game object set active false and do the same thing for your confirm button. So this way when you're done your selection, you close the menu and it's no longer open in the middle panel. And now if we go into the game one last time and we check it out, let's go down to hair color. You can see the buttons work. They change the sliders depending on which button you have selected, and it changes the hair color. You can also go down to the sliders. You can crank those up yourself, and then you can hit confirm and go back to the menu. And there you go, guys. You have a fully functioning hair color changing system. And this can be applied for things like skin color or eyebrow color or anything that you want to change any color on any material on your game objects. You can be creative, do this with weapons, clothing, etc., etc. The logic is all there. It's exactly the same. If you guys did enjoy this video, please don't forget to drop a like. It really helps out my series a whole lot. Leave a comment. It does help appease the YouTube algorithm gods. And if you're feeling like a super champion, check out my Patreon below to support my series.